This is Future Talk.
Future Talk.
Future Talk with Omnia Saleh and Hani Balkis.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Future Talk right here on Pulse 95. It is me, Hani Balkis, with Omnia Saleh, bringing you everything you need to know about what's happening in the tech world, in the UAE, and all around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Tuesday, the 22nd of February. So on your calendar, it would be 22222.
Yes, it's a special date. So it's a good day to do something different, something exciting, so that you can always remember this date for what it holds for you as a memory. Coming up on today's show, we've got lots to share with you. And the biggest news of the day is trips around the Emirates actually becoming a lot cheaper. If you're someone who relies on taxis quite often, we're going to be talking about a new ride-sharing application that is promising a lot cheaper fares for all its customers.
Yes, and ladies and gentlemen, we're not done with UAE news just yet, because we're talking about how the UAE is going to build the world's biggest vertical farm, and that will be producing essential food items. Now, we have been looking at farming still being very relevant in this day and age, and the UAE has acknowledged that, and they're making the biggest as always.
Yes, indeed. Have you ever wondered what happens to SIM cards when we don't use them anymore and we throw them away? Because little do we know, they actually become general waste and they fill up our seas just like all other wastes do. But right here in the UAE, we're always looking to be one step ahead when it comes to sustainability, as the UAE looks to create new biodegradable SIM cards. So SIM cards that will not harm the environment and that will get rid of themselves on their own.
Yes, and ladies and gentlemen, for our apps all around the world segment, we're talking about Twitter and how it might be testing a way to let you untag yourself from threads. So if you're being mentioned and tagged, well, it's getting a little bit annoying. Well, now you can remove yourself from those mentions.
Who do we call, or what do we refer to people who we work with on typical day-to-day basis? We usually call them co-workers, but in the metaverse, that naming may just change dramatically. How will employees work differently in the metaverse, and what will we call our new co-workers? We're going to actually be listening to what Mark Zuckerberg has to say about the world of work actually changing when we enter the metaverse.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot going on today's show, so you do want to keep Pulse 95 locked. We are taking a short break, but we are going to leave you with the song called Fire by Michelle.
Daily digital news. Bits and bytes connect our world.
If you're living right here in the UAE and you are constantly relying on taxis and Ubers to get around the different Emirates, we've got great news for you, because there's a new application out there on the market. It's a very, very recent app that is promising much cheaper fares for all their customers. It's starting out in the Emirate of Dubai, but it's going to be expanding to all Emirates within this upcoming month. And the application goes by the name XX Ride. So it's going to be great news, because especially if you are planning to spend a holiday right here in the UAE, or you still don't have a car, you don't have a driving license, it's such a great way to be able to save up some money, and at the same time it'll be offering the same services like we've usually gotten used to having from apps like Uber, like Careem, and taxis right here in the UAE.
Yes, now we are looking at its rates to be lower due to how it does collect fees. Now, instead of charging a per-ride commission, XX Ride will collect a monthly fixed net amount of 202 dirhams, so around $55, from registered drivers who do use the app, and that is according to the driver agreement information that is available on its website. Now, drivers operating the app will earn the full fare for the journey, except for the authorities' 5 dirham charge, which is applicable to any ride made from Dubai, and the third-party payment systems charge. Now, the saving on the per-ride commission is passed on its customers, who can choose from 5 categories of rides, just like how Uber and Careem operate. We're looking at luxury, electric, XXL, and even family. Now, all of these cars will be luxury cars, such as Lexus and Mercedes-Benz models.
Yes, indeed. So you're going to be traveling in style, that's for sure. As is the case with the apps like Careem and Uber, the car, the driver, and time of arrival will all be shown on a map on the application, so you can feel safe getting into that car because everything is tracked, the phone number, the details of the driver as well as the car. And the app itself has actually signed several long-term partnerships with various approved and licensed limousine companies in the Emirate of Dubai. So if you are wanting to go to any location with a limousine, you will also find that option on the application as well. So as of right now, this application is only available in the Emirate of Dubai, but just like we've mentioned, in this coming month, it's going to be expanding to all Emirates, and the app is found for free on the iOS as well as the Android stores. It's a great application, in my opinion, and I can't wait to see how people make the most out of it.
Yes, and ladies and gentlemen, the good Steve Jobs says all competition is good competition. So even though Careem and Uber do, dominate most of the ride-sharing apps in the UAE, seeing XX Ride come to the play area will make sure that all of these applications will try to up the ante to compete with each other. Ladies and gentlemen, we are taking a short break, and when we come back, we're talking about the UAE and how they are building the world's biggest vertical farm. We're going to leave you with Majid Jordan, Life Worth Living.
Daily digital news. Bits and bytes connect our world.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about how the UAE is going to build the world's biggest vertical farm producing essential food items. Now, the UAE is steadily heading towards a self-sufficiency when it does come to food by betting on big technology and innovation. Now, the UAE will build the biggest vertical farm near the Expo 2020 site, and that would be to bolster the country's food production. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we do know, a lot of the times countries import food, and right here in the UAE, we do have a big importing, but we also want to start relying on ourselves and relying on the country's infrastructure. And the way to do that would be by betting on technology and innovation as well.
Yes, indeed. The UAE is a big advocate on food security, and it's definitely working towards the United Nations' big goal of being self-sufficient when it comes to food production. And this is the first step of many that the UAE is currently working on. So they will be producing many of the essential food items that the world needs, right, or the citizens of the UAE need, such as tomatoes, leafy greens, you name it. You'll be starting to see a lot more local production than before. Speaking at the Food, Agriculture and Livelihoods Business Forum at Expo 2020 of Dubai, the different officials were actually saying that the country is currently heading towards self-sufficiency in food by getting big and betting big on technology and innovation. So they have many targets, yet most of them have very realistic steps to be able to achieve them. So in the recent years, we've actually started seeing a lot more local production in grocery stores, in farmers markets. Right here in the heart of Sharjah, we've held so many at Al Jada, and UAE farmers have actually been growing 70 different varieties of vegetables, fruits, herbs, tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, mangoes, oranges, you name it. We've definitely seen a lot more production. So this is only going to be rising up as the days go by.
Yes, now as we are looking at, the global agriculture and food landscapes facing severe challenges from climate change, shrinking biodiversity, and even depleting water resources, and even disruptions in global supply chains, we are looking at food security becoming a key national priority for many countries. Now, it is even a bigger challenge for countries like the UAE that do import 90% of its food. So we are looking at how the UAE does acknowledge that, food security is a big issue, and, we are making, or the UAE is making these big vertical farms, and, the biggest in the world is right here in the UAE. Now, the UAE did launch the National Food Security Strategy 2018, and that was to strengthen food security and develop local agriculture production. Now, in recent years, we've talked about a lot of, how Abu Dhabi was, promoting farmers in the country, whether it's in Al Zaid or in the capital of the UAE, Abu Dhabi. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at, food security being a top priority by the UAE and using technology to benefit for it. Now, again, we are looking at, advanced farming technologies being used right here in the UAE when it does come to farming. And, a lot of people would, beg to differ whether how we can use technology to farm. But let me tell you, technology is a big factor and a big actor when it does come to the role of farming.
Absolutely. The biggest evidence of it all has definitely been the hydroponics technology that has allowed a lot of families living right here in the UAE to have their very own self-grown farm in the backyard, in the balcony of their own houses. It's very simple, and we've got a lot of different tech enthusiasts helping out when it comes to this. One big example right here in the heart of Sharjah is VeggieTech, where they've definitely been providing very easy kits of this form of technology to help people grow their very own farms. And whether you actually knew this fact before or not, we cannot forget that the UAE was actually the first country around the Middle East to have the first greenhouse established back in 1968. So it's definitely been a pioneer ever since then. And we're only looking at the land right here in the UAE every single day transforming from what many may seem like a barren desert to a green haven, no matter where you walk.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, let us know your guys' thoughts. 4215. We are taking a short break, and when we come back, we're talking all about biodegradable SIM cards that are now available right here in the UAE.
Check this out. Check this out. Pulse 95.
What happens to SIM cards when we throw them away, when we no longer use them or they expire? Where does their fate end? Right here in the UAE, we are looking to be one step ahead when it comes to sustainability, and that starts with even the smallest things that could come to your mind. The UAE has announced new biodegradable SIM cards. So when we say biodegradable, they are ones that once you are letting them be in the waste bin, they start to degrade on their own, and they do not harm the environment whatsoever. And they are definitely coming from UAE or Virgin Mobile company right here in the UAE.
Yes, now this move is in line with the UAE's vision to create a vibrant new green economy that will offer the world a unique model for sustainable development. Now, these biodegradable SIM cards are the most sustainable option available in the UAE for customers whose device cannot yet accept eSIMs, and it does require no plastic. Now, the company said it would progressively phase out single-use plastic SIM cards. Now, in the recent years, we've been looking at a push to go to eSIMs, but for, I don't know how often people change their SIM cards. I've had the same SIM card for the past 12 years, so I don't know how often you guys throw away your SIM cards, but the biodegradable SIM card is made from oxo biodegradable plastic that does break down into tiny pieces and then slowly degrades in the presence of oxygen and UV light. So when it does go to a landfill, the degradation process can take between 4 to 6 months.
Yes, indeed. On the other hand, regular plastics and ones that are found in our SIM cards that we use on a day-to-day basis, they take hundreds of years to decompose, and that's if they actually remain in the waste bin for those 100 years. So this is a great move, especially because we know that a lot of tourists prefer the UAE, and it is their number one destination. So when they come right here to the UAE, they will typically buy a SIM card. They'll use it for, let's say, 1, 2, 3 months that they are here for, and then they just throw them away because they're not going to need them anymore and they expire to begin with. So instead of those SIM cards ending in the waste bin, these new biodegradable SIM cards will be a lot better at supporting the UAE's vision in becoming a lot greener by the year 2030. So the main slogan that the UAE is going by, we can do more and better with less. And that's definitely starting with some of the tiniest gadgets that we use on a day-to-day basis that we don't take a second thought about. Despite their tiny size, every SIM card needs to be punched out of a credit card sized plastic sheet. So we don't think about the way we get the SIM card out of its box, and that box is also non-degradable. So with this new initiative, all of the container, the SIM card itself, it'll be able to destroy itself on its own by the presence of our very beloved sunlight as well as oxygen.
Yes, and again, ladies and gentlemen, we are very keen on sustainable energy and, climate change and protecting our environment. Now, if we do want to look at statistics, it is estimated that at least 14 million tons of plastic do end up in the ocean every year, and that does impact fragile ecosystems. Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, being sustainable, always recycling is always the better thing. We do need to protect Mother Earth, and the UAE is doing its part to do so as well. Ladies and gentlemen, let us know your guys' thoughts. 4215. Do you want an eSIM, or would you like a biodegradable SIM card? But we are taking a short break and moving to the sports headlines. But when we come back, we're talking all about Twitter.
Pulse 95.
Apps all around.
What's worth a click and download?
Pulse
it's worth a click and download, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking about Twitter and how it might be testing a way to let you untag yourself from threads. Now, Twitter might be testing an escape hatch for users who don't want to be part of a thread, or better known as a conversation. Now, on Friday, Jane Machun Wong did tweet an apparent screenshot of a new Leave This Conversation feature, which will work great with, conversations on Twitter that do, kind of get out of hand, and a lot of comments and a lot of mentions do go on.
Yes, indeed. Now, the way this feature works is very simple. It would allow you to basically untag your username from a Twitter conversation, and this would prevent people from mentioning you in the conversation again and again, and it would actually even stop you from receiving any notifications about it. So this feature looks a lot different from the Mute This Conversation, which is an existing option on Twitter that allows you to turn off notifications for a thread that you're mentioned in, because this new feature will prevent you from being mentioned altogether. So leaving the conversation will make your Twitter handle appear as plain text in the tweet where you're mentioned, rather than a hyperlink where someone would normally be able to tap onto it and it would take them to your Twitter account or Twitter profile. So this would actually help, in my opinion, decrease the toxicity that we tend to see on the platform, prevent a lot of future arguments that may take place on the platform itself.
Yes, when it does come to cyberbullying, sometimes it does get a little bit out of hand on the platform Twitter. And, back in 2010, a very famous rapper that does go by the name of Tyler, the Creator, made a tweet and said, "How do you guys get bullied online? Just close your phone." And now you can literally do that on Twitter by leaving a conversation and just, get out of that conversation. If it's something that is annoying you and making you uncomfortable, it's very simple and easy to leave conversation. And again, this is just another bid for Twitter to make the application more user-friendly. Twitter for Professionals has came out, Twitter Blue has came out, and now you can actually tip, people on Twitter users with Ethereum now. So again, Twitter is trying its best to be that one place where you can now connect with people and yet at the same time give your props per se to Twitter users by donating to them Ethereum. Again, they are trying, their best to make it type of an OnlyFans type of community. I can say that, and we'll see how things go. I think Twitter is going in the right direction per se. But again, we might be seeing a decline in Twitter use in the coming years, and that is my humble opinion.
Yes, indeed. Let us know your thoughts for 215. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be talking all about what you would call your coworkers if you both were working in the metaverse.
Check this out. Check this out. Oh, 95.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking all about Facebook, or better known as Meta. Now, when we're talking about Meta, for example, we have, in comparison, Google. And when you call other people who work at Google, you call them Googlers, right? With Meta, they're thinking about Meta, MetaMates, or even Me. Now, Mark Zuckerberg, who does own Meta, does want Facebook and Meta employees to be going by the name of MetaMates. Now, this stated values does also call for focusing on the long term and building, as he does say, awesome things. Now, Meta chief Mark Zuckerberg did lay out revamped company values Tuesday and did urge workers to be MetaMates who do treat one another with respect and look to the future.
Yes, indeed. The main aim behind these revamped values is all about moving fast, but at the same time moving smart. So he wants people in the metaverse, or co-workers in the metaverse, to treat each other with respect, but yet at the same time be aligned with the company's values and mission. So they want, or more specifically, Mark Zuckerberg wants co-workers or MetaMates to take care of the company and take care of each other. And that is basically mostly focused on team building exercises, making sure that they all know the main moral that the new rebranded Meta actually stands for.
Yes, and ladies and gentlemen, as an ethic move of fast and break things from Facebook's earlier days has evolved into simply move fast as a team does go to deliver innovations. Now, Facebook did last rework its professed values back in 2007, and that was according to the company's co-founder and chief. Now, Meta's new credo also does call for being direct, but respectful to colleagues and collaborating as MetaMates. So we're looking at Mark Zuckerberg looking at how he wants full transparency between co-workers and call one another MetaMates, but at the same time, be respectful between each other. Now, we are looking at, also calling for focusing on the long term in building, therefore, implementing that there is job security at Meta and how they are always looking for, the future and how they can make the most out of working at Meta. Now, the notion of Zuckerberg urging employees to be MetaMates is a moral building pitch, and it was promptly actually mocked on Twitter. Some people even joked that the word sounded better suited to, unfortunately, a bad dating app or even sailors on a ship that were in troubled waters.
Yes, indeed. Previously, coworkers who used to work at Facebook used to be known as Facebookers. And now that they've rebranded to Meta, they want to make sure that the name actually suits the new look for the company. And in short, the 6 new principles that Mark Zuckerberg hopes that his employees would abide by are moving fast, focusing on long-term impact, building awesome things, living in the future, being direct and respecting their other MetaMates, and last but not least, MetaMates, and me. So in general, mainly having the company as a whole be the focus, and then the co-workers, and then the person himself or herself. But in my opinion, I think the last regulation or principle that they're working on should be changed. I think if they focus on fixing or advancing themselves, then they'll be able to pour from a full cup instead of pouring from an empty cup. But that's just my opinion.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, again, we are looking at how Facebook is trying its best, or again, we keep calling them Facebook, but Meta as a whole trying its best to, be a positive type of work environment. And, when we do talk about Facebook, we do say how critics have, derided Facebook's rebrand as an attempted distraction from an avalanche of damaging revelations from the whistleblower Frances Haugen that did happen earlier last year, or late last year per se. Now, again, I find it kind of weird, calling people MetaMates. It's like right here on Pulse 95, us calling each other 95ers. But I feel like it's kind of corny and cringy.
True.
To have, names for coworkers and just, it's kind of feel like pushing it down the throat to be positive. But that's just my opinion. 4215, let us know your guys' thoughts. We want to know your opinion. But ladies and gentlemen, this does conclude Future Talk for today. And we will be seeing you guys same time, same place tomorrow. But again, we have a lot of shows going on Pulse 95 throughout the day, all week, every single day of the week. But right here on Future Talk, we will see you tomorrow, same time, same place, only here on Pulse
95.
If you liked this episode of The Morning Majlis, drop a like and subscribe.
95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.